With Will Greer suspended and Treon Harris struggling, Jim McElwain was looking all over the place for quarterback help, and he just didn't have it for the last half of 2015. Now, going into 2016, quarterbacks have plenty to choose from at Florida, but who's the right one? We bring in David Waters from SEC Breakdown to help us break down the quarterback situation in Florida. So, David, let's dive right into this. Let's start with Luke Del Rio. So here's a kid who's spent time at Alabama and at Oregon State, and even though he hasn't hit the field much, he's very familiar with Doug Nussmeier's offense, so he could have an advantage there possibly.
And Mark, thanks for having me. But yeah, that's the key for Del Rio. He's been able to sit with Doug Nussmeier at his time at Alabama. He didn't transfer to Oregon State when it looked like he really wasn't going to play. And then, Oregon State brought the new coaching staff in, and it didn't fit his styles. It wasn't more of a pro style. They went to more of a spread, so he decided to leave there. And now he ended up at Florida, reunited with Doug Nussmeier, been able to sit behind and learn because he had to sit out his transfer year. Got this, in all reports, we heard ESPN kind of did a summer tour at Florida last year, and they were really impressed with what they saw with Del Rio. And, they were saying if he didn't have to sit out, he was, probably looking better than Will Greer and Treon Harris at the time. Those two were the still main battles when the last summer was going on. We didn't know who was going to start, but ESPN kept really harping on if Del Rio could play, it looked like he would probably be the guy. But, that was a moot point. He wasn't going to play. But, like we said, he has experience with Nussmeier. He's not really the prototypical size of, what Jim McElwain would really like. He probably likes his quarterback 6'3", taller, but he's probably he's a 6'2". But he probably can see it's going to be a quarterback that can do probably what Will Greer did last year at Florida. He's going to be smart with the ball. He's going to trust his playmakers. And, we didn't get to see it much. We saw a couple spring practices with him. He's pretty accurate with the ball, but it's really going to be, can he do the things that Jim McElwain would like to do, and pretty much what Will Greer did last season. He wasn't elite, but can he be good enough? With that Florida defense, the quarterback doesn't have to do a lot. Don't turn the ball over, don't put your defense in bad spots, score enough points, and you'll probably get out with wins. Find the playmakers, use the middle of the field, spread the ball around. That's probably what they're going to hit on with Del Rio. He was able to do that, in practice last year, see what Will Greer did up close, see what, the coaches liked, and then he can build from there.
Now, the quarterback with the most experience is probably not going to play quarterback. Treon Harris most likely playing wide receiver or defensive back for the Gators this fall. Now, the quarterback left with the most experience would most notably be Austin Appleby, who transfers in from Purdue. I got to see him play quite a bit, about 2,800 yards passing in his career in West Lafayette, 19 touchdowns, 19 interceptions. I would have to say, based on what I saw, the 19 interceptions, I wouldn't go crazy about that figure. Trying to do a lot of things, playing with 2- and 3-score deficits most of the time. Purdue's been the worst team in the Big Ten for the last 3 or 4 seasons, so he hasn't had a whole lot to work with, a running game that's been dormant. They found a freshman quarterback at Purdue, and that might be one of the reasons why Appleby was shown the door or looked for another opportunity elsewhere. So what have you heard about Mr. Appleby?
Like Mark, like you said, he comes in, he's got the elite size of, what they're looking for. He comes in at 6'5", 239. He was an Elite 11 quarterback. I mean, he's got pro-style size, and that's, what a big thing going into what Jim McElwain's offense. And I'll quote 24/7, they look back at stats last year, and Florida really liked when they were at their best, they were able to use the middle of the field. So now Will Greer last year completed 71% of his passes in the middle of the field, while Treon Harris only had 46%. And Greer threw 7 of his 10 touchdowns over the middle, while Treon only threw 2 of his 9 over the middle. So you could tell it was the height difference there that helped those guys. So now if you get Austin Appleby, who can come in at 6'5", that's really going to be able to open up Florida offense up from there. And like you said, he's the most experienced guy. He's the only one coming in that has on-field experience. But like you said, also he struggled with, probably didn't have a lot of talent around him. So I'm going to say this is kind of similar to the Grayson Lambert position Georgia found themselves in last year. He didn't have a lot of talent around him at Virginia, come in and played better at Georgia, but he wasn't good enough to carry the team once Nick Chubb went down. So if Florida can find a running game to also help Appleby and let him use the playmakers Florida has in Antonio Callaway and Brandon Powell, then maybe he is the guy. But like you said, 19 interceptions this last two seasons combined. And but so consider the supporting cast. It may be a better situation for Florida. In his last game against Indiana last year, he was 36 of 57, 332 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Indiana gave a lot of teams fits last year in the Big Ten, and that was a good way for him to go out. So he's a grad transfer, plenty of experience, and could he kind of be the surprise coming in when he was a late grad transfer?
Yeah, I'm going to be intrigued in this one because he, on a regular basis, had to go out there with wide receivers who were not separating against better defensive backs, and the offensive line being shoddy and really, as you just mentioned, inferior talent. But he came in as an Elite 11 quarterback. He will also run it. No, he's not dynamic running the ball, but at 6'5", 240, he can move some guys. So think Cardell Jones moving some guys out of the way when you need 1.5 yards or even 4. So he is an option right there, and it'll be interesting to see how he progresses with a little bit better talent around him. Then we got Feleipe Franks, who comes in, much heralded freshman. According to, I believe, 24/7, they had him rated as the 5th-rated pro-style quarterback. He comes in as a 4-star, and he's already enrolled, already on campus and ready to go.
Right. Like you said, number 5 quarterback from 24/7, 6'5" with a big arm. But, I've got a little – I've heard from some sources there at Florida that he's probably nowhere near close to ready mentally. He has all the tools. He could probably gain a little bit of weight. But he has a lot to learn and polish, and it's big time for polishing. If you've seen with McElwain, he needs a quarterback that has the traditional, can step back, throw off his back foot, or not throw off his back foot, set his feet and throw. And as a freshman coming in, I think we saw it at the Army game. Franks had pretty good practices throughout the weeks, but when it came crunch time in the game, he really struggled. He was always looking for the big play, didn't take the short thing that were given to him, always trying to make a big play. But, you can't put too much stock. We talked about this in our recruiting update when we did for Florida. You can't put too much stock in what you do in those week-long games. It's only there a week, learning a system for a week and then trying to put it all together for a Saturday. A lot of those guys are going to try and make big plays when it comes game time. But, his teams were successful in high school. He led them to state championships. And I think they came up short this past year in the state finals, but he got them there, and it was no fault of his. But it's going to be interesting. It was the whole talk about him with Army Week was him, Jacob Eason, and Shea Patterson from Ole Miss. All 3 of those guys went and played together, and he was not the one who looked the pass out of all those 3. So a lot of people were up in arms and he's not going to be ready. He's not going to be good. But just remember, folks, it was 1 week. It was 1 game. Go back and look what they did in high school, and we'll go from there. But going in, at least he's an early enrollee. He'll get to learn. He's already in the winter workout program. He'll get to put on a little bit of weight, and he'll get to go through spring as an early enrollee. And how much is he dedicated to learn the playbook, and how much is he dedicated to learn from probably Del Rio and Appleby, pick their brains a little bit from the system and from on-field experience, and maybe grow from there.
Kyle Trask is a kid who's already on campus as well. Less heralded, number 90 pro-style quarterback in the same service, 3-star kid. But he's in the mix.
He is in the mix, and it was a really weird story with Trask. He wasn't highly recruited nationally, but Florida went down to look at some other players at his high school, and and here's the weird part. He's the backup at the school he was at. The high school was running more of a traditional – more of a spread up-tempo style of offense, and that's not his forte. He's a 6'6" freshman coming in. He's got the size, much like Austin Appleby and Feleipe Franks. He's coming in 6'6", but he didn't even start at his high school. But Doug Nussmeier was really impressed with what they saw at practice, so he invited him to a Florida's summer camp. He came to Florida summer camp, impressed the coaches even more, and they offered a scholarship right there on the spot. He didn't have many offers at the time, and pretty much it took him 2 days, and he was committed to Florida. And he got the offer right away. Didn't really shut down his recruitment pretty much after that. So I don't really know if any other schools tried to get into the mix, with what they were maybe hearing, what Florida saw, or whatever. But Doug Nussmeier and Jim McElwain saw something in him to offer him a scholarship. And we got to lay the ground here. He's going to be a project. He doesn't have a lot of experience. So look for him to be the wild card in future years. They want to get him some experience, Like I said, he's got the size, he's got the tools. Can he mentally handle it since he didn't start in high school? Can he mentally handle the aspect of coming in college and learning as much as he can? But definitely look for him to be redshirted. Frank's, they may not redshirt him. I don't, it's according to how much they want to get these freshmen game experience. But Trask, I think, will be redshirted either way with his lack of experience. And then I think, after the spring, I think we'll have a 3-horse race going into fall camp between Del Rio, Appleby, and Franks. And I think they'll go from there. And, we'll see what happens.
And that definitely leads me into my next comment here, because you know this program about as well as anyone. I try to cover it as well as I possibly can, and we pretty much confirmed and agreed off the top that Del Rio's 1, Appleby's 2, Frank's 3, and Trask 4. But hey, they could get 3, 4, 5 practices into spring practice, and that could be jumbled up, maybe especially amongst the top 3. So this is a storyline that's going to continue through August, and I would be surprised that if we had a starter anywhere close to mid-August, maybe something in that range, that McElwain would want to make that decision a couple weeks before the opener, possibly.
Yeah, and we saw it last year with the Will Grier, Treon Harris situation. While I think it was probably Will Grier the whole time, those first couple games probably weren't going to be as big as a test for Florida as some of their SEC games. So Jim McElwain wanted to get, Treon Harris was the only one who had game experience coming in. Will Grier did not. I think he wanted to see both of them under the lights in his system to see which one took off, and it ended up being Will Grier. He had the show-out games in Tennessee against Ole Miss, and it kind of just took the lead from there. It wasn't looking back until the suspension. So I think we'll see the similar situation here. I think he'll want to see maybe his top 2 quarterbacks, whoever he chooses to be, thrown under the lights, and see which one performs. Florida's early season schedule is pretty weak next year. They have teams that will pretty much control. So do we see, the quarterbacks in the game, 2, possibly 3 quarterbacks a game, and let him choose from there? I do think it's the top 2 are Del Rio, Appleby. Which one takes it from there? I would say the only thing that hurts Appleby is he's only going to be there 1 year, no matter what. Have to say so. If all these quarterbacks are even, it's my theory of thought that I would play the guy who at least has another year to go on. Go ahead and get that guy more experience so he's ready for the next year as well. So if any of these quarterbacks are close to even, I think Appleby kind of just gets shuffled to the back and more of the emergency quarterback, and get the guys who need more experience into the starting role and build to make a big run in 2017.
Good thought there. David Waters, along with myself, Chad Niebling, and Mike Laval, form SEC Breakdown. Join our Twitter page there. We have polls just about every day, along with all sorts of information on SEC football and other sports. And we do our Blab show every Thursday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I can't think of 3 guys put together that know more about SEC football than David, Chad, and Mike, and they let me tag along as well. All right, David, quarterback situation in Florida. We're going to be talking about this one for the next several months. So thanks for breaking it down at this point.
Thanks, Mark.